ever since I was a little kid, I would just sit down and play anything that came to the top of my head. Because after you got all the tools, you know, after you know what the chords are, after you know what all the chords are, then you got your tools, and you got all the scales. Those are also tools. So after you got all the tools, then you start putting all those tools together. And what I realized was that the vocabulary that I was developing on the piano was kind of interesting, and it's related to the size of my hands, but it's also related to where I came from. And they're kind of big, wide chord, whereas a lot of jazz guys will do. Which doesn't sound like Chester, Montana to me. It's like city music, you know. I've lived long enough in the city and I played with enough people that I can do that. But I found that the stuff I was doing was just, there weren't as many notes in it to some degree, you know, and even if there were a lot of notes in it, they didn't change very often. And I relate that directly to where I grew up. The more I listened to myself, the more I realized that what I was writing had to do with what was here. And there's a lot of kinds of music now, of this instrumental kind of music. People make up these pieces because it's what they make up, and then they slap a name on it. They'll say, you know, the river at sunset or some thing like that. They'll call it like, and really it has nothing to do with the river at sunset. So I tried to write music that reflected what was going on and what I was writing about and where I came from. And to me, the things that are really important about growing up here are silence, and the wind, and the river, and the long view. And the Sweetgrass Hills are part of that long view. And if I lived right in the Sweetgrass Hills, I probably would write a different kind of music. But the long view is really important to me. So musically, there are different kinds. An interval is the distance from one note to another. From here to there, that's a fifth. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. From here to there is a second. So you have a different feeling with this kind of sound than this kind of sound. That's the most common interval in the music of the world. Pretty much every country, every musical tradition uses that interval, and they use it a lot, and it's a very restful thing. So I found that I was using a lot of these bigger intervals. Instead of, you know, which is fine, but it's not me, it's not Montana. So I was doing intervals that you're not supposed to be able to reach. People try and play my music and say, I can't reach that. I say, well, yeah, you can, because, you know, you got a hinge there too as well as here. But that's a whole different question of technique. So there's a piece I wrote about the Marias River called Marias River Breakdown. And I started off which, if you just let it go, it'll just take you on. It'll take you out. So that's one way to do that. And then if I wanted to start adding motion to it, I just started repeating it. And when I go out fly fishing, I hear things a lot, because the river really makes an incredible noise. It's really amazing. You hear water going over the rocks. It's just an amazingly complex sound. So I was trying to figure out how to get the motion of a river out of that interval, which... And the other thing that I was trying to get across in here was all these different currents. If you ever fish, you know that if you're fly fishing, you've got a floating line, and it goes across all these different currents, so your lines go on at different speeds, and that's part of the skill of fly fishing, just trying to figure out how to get through all these different currents. But I wanted to have these currents, so in other words, there's a kind of steady gurgling of the river, but I wanted to have all these other currents in it. And just about the time when you're out in the river and you're getting so bored, something like all of a sudden a kingfisher will come land up on the branch and start screaming, or a deer will pop up on the hill, or a fish will jump over there. So there are all these little events that happen in the middle of all this current